Good time of day, guys! My name is Godzi, and welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. Last episode, we continued our way through Saikoroshi as I gave my theory on what is happening, and I am almost assuredly correct because I am always correct. And yeah, Rika beat Satoko with a chair. That was very cool, or I guess I should say Bern. That's a hard habit to break. Then she divulged everything to Yamamoto, and Rena and the others overheard, so they're like, oh, let's make a club, and now Bern doesn't know what to do. So, yeah, alright. I got nothing else to say, so let us continue. After refusing their suggestion that we all go home together, I left on my own. It was Rika Furude's right, not mine, to enjoy going home with them. It wasn't something I, Frederica Berncastle, could accept. I'm so used to saying Federica instead because of fucking Ryza 3, but whatever. Very similar names, it's just one has an R in it that the other doesn't. What was I, anyway? That's a way of putting it. I wondered if another ball could fly into my head like before. That was how this world's Rika Furude was possessed by me. So if I got hit again, would I vanish and the pure Rika Furude who lives in this world return? If only I wasn't me, I wouldn't hesitate to take them up on their offer. This world truly was far sadder than the one I'd come from. But this world had something all its own, and the opportunity to become a happy world in its own right. If I hadn't known about the other worlds, I wouldn't have been able to contain tears of joy at the mere premonition of happiness I might once again attain. Were these conflicting emotions those of this world's Rika Furude sleeping inside of me? Those emotions made me angry, and I blamed myself, asking why I'd put their offer on hold and went home all alone. Aw. I need water. Okay. I'm back. Welcome home. My mother always immediately followed that up with a "do you have homework?" but not today. Rika, come into the kitchen. Oh, we gotta talk about the whole chair thing, I guess. Her voice was vaguely cheerful and light. I wondered what it was. Did she want to surprise me, in a good way? But I couldn't remember today being special. A person's expectations sometimes come out in their voice. For the time being, it felt okay to go poke my head in. I set down my things and headed for the kitchen. When I entered, my mother had already started on dinner, despite it being so early. She was in a good mood. I wonder if something nice happened. I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself and beating that little blonde brat with a chair. What? That's not responsible. Every year at this time, with the Watanagashi festival approaching, she usually got more and more impatient with all the preparations and setup. Maybe because it's the last one. Knowing all that, my mother's good mood baffled and confused me. I asked if she needed something. When I did, she suggested something I never heard even once in these 100 years. Come over here and help me make dinner. We're having curry today. Let's make something wonderful and surprise your father with it. Uh-huh. I didn't like curry that much, but before these 100 years, meaning not me, but Rika Furude, I think she might have liked it. I knew at least that my mother was trying to make her daughter happy and suggesting she and Rika Furude, not I, make dinner together. I didn't like my mother that much. We got that. She was prone to hysterics, and I hated how she always sounded like she was hunting you down when she talked. When she treated me so nicely, my reason for disliking her felt irrational. Wondering why my mother had had a change of heart, I decided to go along with it so as not to hurt her feelings. Then you can peel the potatoes. Can you do it with a knife? Actually, that's dangerous, so use the peeler instead. Okay. I was actually rather good with a knife. Same. Wait, what are we talking about? I was so good that when I peeled daikon radishes, I can make a long strip of skin at the same time I slice them. I'm assuming of the daikon, not yours. But there was no reason to damage my mother's pride by showing that her daughter could use knives better than her. I decided to make her look good for now. My mother had probably been using knives for a decade now, but I'd been using them for... Okay. Get out of here, random fucking Windows notification. Yeah, that's a Windows 11 notification sound. What you gonna do about it? I upgraded out of curiosity, and it's just like, whatever. I'm just dealing with it now. My mother had probably been using knives for a decade now, but I'd been using them for many decades. There was an order of magnitudes difference between us. So I wanted to be proud of using a knife better than my mother. I wanted to brag about it. But that might have trampled over her feelings, her want to teach her daughter how to use a knife. Okay. Parents are supposed to live longer than their children. So children respect the things their parents have learned from having lived longer than them. But witches like me live longer than their parents and learn many more things. Still, I think I probably never learned what I really needed to. I mean, as long as I genuinely listened to my mother, she'd never get hysterical. If I didn't feel like respecting her as my senior in life, she wouldn't feel like she needed to act as one either. In the end, all that was left was a cold, uncomfortable relationship between parent and child. I gotta turn on my fan. I don't know why, it's fucking warm today. Fan? Thank you. Alright. If I had acted more like a daughter and pretended to be an ignorant child when I needed to be, maybe my relationship with her would have been more peaceful, like this. Basically, she was Rika Furude's mother, not the mother of the witch who'd lived for 100 years. Thinking about it made it seem obvious she'd be cold to me. So first we put the ones in the pot that take the longest to cook. Okay. When do we put in the onions? The onions will melt if we cook them too long, so we can leave them for last. You work so hard on cutting the onions too. I'm sure they'll taste delicious. Okay. My mother smiled. She seemed very happy. Her smile was warm. I thought I'd completely forgotten over these 100 years, but I remembered for less than a moment in time. My parents had to die in 1981. That fate was unchangeable. And besides, we could never get along in the first place, so it didn't matter if they died. As thoughts like that overlapped, maybe my concern with my parents had waned. Our hearts had steadily lost their connection, and the situation had steadily worsened. Before now, I hadn't thought I could gain anything from this world. Not once did I think it would make me realize something like that. With a mother like this, maybe spending time with her would be warm. It would be fun. That's right. The reason I rejected my mother's warmth, maybe it was because I wanted to soften the sadness I felt at her death. If I couldn't change the fate she met in 1981, then she might as well hate me. Was that the idea of the root of it all? In this world, my mother hadn't died in 1981. She would stay here for a long time to come. I felt just a little jealous of Rika Furude, and I was stricken with the desire to return this world's me to her. This world was so different than my previous one. Keiichi wasn't here, Shion wasn't here, Hanyu wasn't here. But in exchange, Satoshi and my parents were here. There was no club, but there would be one soon. Satoko wasn't my best friend, but she could be in the future. I could weigh my previous world and this one on the scales, but I wouldn't know which way it would tip. I decided to leave this decision up to Hanyu. Yes, my destiny wasn't mine alone. It was Hanyu's destiny too. Whichever I chose, I would have to talk to Hanyu before making my final decision. This multiple world concept was something only I I only had because Hanyu had lent me her power. If Hanyu had never given it to me, it would have been over from the very start. Takano would have sliced open my belly, and that would have been it. We put the lid on the curry, so now it just had to simmer. My father returned in the meantime, and really enjoyed seeing us making curry together. Then, at my mother's suggestion, he set the table. In any normal 1981, he really hated it when my mother told him to do anything. But he wasn't troubled at all at the prospect in this world. Rika, put the rice on everyone's plates, please. Can you do that? Yep, I can. Of course I can do that, idiot. It's something I'd thought many times before. But this time, I didn't. I only thought about thinking about it. I opened the warm, steaming rice cooker and plated the rice. My mother brought the piping hot curry pot over and split it among everyone's plates. Oh, nice! So Mom made curry for the rice Rika served, huh? It looks delicious. He's wrong, isn't he? Saying that even though we made the curry together, isn't he such a rude father? Meep. I peeled myself back. Furude Rika shouted that I wasn't needed, so I pulled back. I withdrew inside Rika Furude, and she got to enjoy a family dinner from the bottom of her heart. Okay. When we saw the crooked potatoes, we all laughed pleasantly. I would never cut potatoes to be so ugly. But Rika Furude was still bad at this, so these things happened. When I used the same ingredients, the only thing curry tasted like was the curry powder from the store. After 100 years with the same curry powder, it tasted the same, no matter how you made it. But this particular curry tasted different. I cried at what Rika Furude had lost. No, at what I had lost. Rika Furude got to experience the warmth she had once forgotten. I wondered if another ball would come flying and hit me in the head. Then I would pass out for a while, and upon waking again, I would be gone. Wasn't that the best possible happy ending? I was the stranger here. I thought this universe was the strange one from out of all the other parallel universes. But it was me. I was the stranger. Then what had that world been? The one I had reached after 100 years. Was its happiness that we'd all won? Keiichi, Rena, Mion, Satoko, Shion, and I. Was it all worth nothing? That wasn't true. It was a radiant world. One we'd all won the right to live in after 100 years of learning to trust in each other. It was replete with a different kind of happiness than this one. Both shone brightly, and neither was better or worse than the other. Maybe, in the end, most worlds weren't better or worse than any other. I only lived in the extreme worlds, the ones where I struggled to see whether Takano killed me or not. So out of all the infinite universes, I started to think of them as either right or wrong. But the multiverse wasn't simple enough to think of in binaries like that. Tomorrow's dinner might be steak or salted sauri. It wasn't about which was right and which was wrong. In both of those worlds, I'd spend a happy time eating dinner with family. What if my respective selves had been reversed during tonight's dinner? But that was an incredibly tasteless thing to ask. The real problem wasn't that big to begin with. Neither my last world nor this world was better than the other. I needed to accept that. I still didn't know where the fragment I needed to return to my world was. But what if I never knew, and the power of the crystal ball connecting me to Hanyu disappeared? I would disappear like the stranger I was, and give this body back to Rika Furude. From her point of view, she would have to say that I had returned to my old world. Just as I once called this world a daydream, for Rika Furude, my old world was the real daydream. Her strange delusions of me would simply disappear along with it. Maybe it didn't really matter how to return to my original world. Which world would I decide was the original? Maybe that was really all this was about. After we finished eating, we cleaned up our places and started washing things. My father said he had a meeting tonight and he was about to leave again. Rika, could you wash these for me? I have something to talk with Dad about, so please do the rest. Okay. I responded cheerfully as Rika Furude, but I had realized something slightly out of place. If she had something to talk to my father about, there were plenty of chances during dinner. Yeah, I figured there was a sinister undertone to this. But she made me wash the dishes so they could talk amongst themselves. Rika just had to stay put and wash the dishes, but I couldn't suppress the curiosity that was welling up, and so snuck over to the front door to listen in on what my parents were saying. My mother was the one talking. Her tone of voice wasn't a cheery one. Oh, no, they do have appearances. Hello, CG. Yamamoto-san is discussing it with a big hospital in the city. Yeah, I figured it was us. From what he said, it might be her heart more than her brain. Apparently, there's a wonderful doctor there who can help. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have asked. Yamamoto certainly hadn't promised to keep our discussion in the nurse's office to himself. As soon as I left, he'd probably called my parents and told them their daughter was ranting about nonsense. He probably explained it as my isolation at school wearing down on my mind and damaging my heart. Considering what I told him, even that would be a conscientious interpretation. Did you talk to Rika about it? I will after this. I mean, it feels like we're tricking her, given that tomorrow the doctor will be here and will suddenly be off to the hospital. Oh, shit. But, you know, when I think about how she feels, I can understand. Her friends got up and moved away, leaving her all alone. I should have tried to understand her feelings. Rika's always been saying she didn't want to move. We didn't wait for her to deal with that, and we made her repress it. When is Yamamoto-sensei coming tomorrow? He said the evening, but he didn't give me an exact time. He said he'd prefer it if you were there too. I'll be in the assembly hall tomorrow, so when he gets here, give me a call. Alright. Don't be discouraged. I understand why she's saying she wants to go back to her original world, but there's nothing we can do anymore. This was decided between the village and the national government. I at least want to give her some fun things to look back on when she remembers living in Hinamizawa. You're right. It's time, so I'll get going. I'll leave Rika to you. Alright. Come back safely. I snuck back into the kitchen the same as I'd come, but I think the floorboards must have creaked. Oh. When my mother returned to the kitchen, she still didn't sound particularly cheerful. Were you listening, Rika? Yamamoto-sensei called us today. He told us what you talked to him about. Meep. Yamamoto's really mean for talking about it without asking me. Rika, I'm sorry. You wanted to live in this village forever, didn't you? About that! We never thought about your feelings, and I think we said a lot of pretty harsh things to you. It's okay. Doesn't really bother me. My mother's apology was meant to be heard by the Rika Furude living in this world. It wasn't for me to accept, so I denied it. But my mother kept apologizing anyway. I was going to deny it again, but I stopped. It wasn't my turn. I should pull back. And then, I thought I felt myself begin to fade out. As I did, I felt my eyes grow warm. The rest was, for me, a misty, hazy world. I cried as I buried my face in my mother's chest. And my mother cried as well as she hugged me. If I could have disappeared like that, this too might have been Rika Furude's life. After that, my mother told a lot of stories of Hinamizawa, as if to reminisce about her own childhood. About what she was like as a kid, what she did, and where. About things happening or not happening. As she talked, we comforted each other, both of us wanting our beloved village to stay in our hearts forever. And when your mom was little, all the elderly people in the village treated me like I was really important. That was because they believed I was the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. Oyashiro-sama's reincarnation? Oh. Okay, so somewhere down the line there was an additional Furude daughter? I forget exactly how it worked, but it was like Rika was the 7th eldest daughter in a row or some shit. So that's what they believed, but now I guess she's the 8th, so she's not special. I've never told you, have I? There's an old legend in the Furude family. If there are 8 first children in a row... Oh, okay, the 8th is the special one, not the 7th, my bad. So she's the 9th. If there are 8 first children in a row who are girls, that 8th girl is said to be the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. That girl happened to be me. Not me? You're our first child and a girl, but you would be the 9th one. We have a maternal line, I suppose. Your mom is the 8th. Oyashiro-sama's reincarnation. But this is a secret, okay? We have to make sure not to tell anyone about it. Interesting. So, what's the implication of this with the fragment, then? Does this mean Rika's mom would be more likely to have it, even though it doesn't make any thematic sense? The only ones who know are your late grandmother, me, and you. It's a secret between the two of us, okay? Sometimes, as proof of trust between girls, they reveal secrets to one another. For my mother, this was probably a trivial secret that she could use for that reason. But for me, it was different. Hanyu was first able to appear before the 8th of 8 consecutive generations of girls, before Oyashiro-sama's reincarnation. But in this world, Rika Furude wasn't the 8th. She wasn't Oyashiro-sama's reincarnation. So, in this world, Hanyu couldn't appear before Rika Furude. And that was when, with my face buried in my mother's chest, I felt a warmth. No. Hi. Hi, Steam friend. Go away. I felt a warmth. No. A literal heat. Is the fragment in her after all? I figured it would have only made sense for it to be in Rika. Are we sure? Am I actually wrong? That's bullshit. Does she have a fever? No. This felt the same as Hanyu's power. Well, this was a secret. With my grandmother dead, there was only one who knew my mother was Oyashiro-sama's reincarnation. The woman herself. Which meant if my mother was gone, the fragment of there already being a reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama in this world would disappear. My warm tears ceased to flow, and I felt my eyes drying up as I plummeted to the bottom of the abyss of despair. It was her. Mom had the fragment in her. Are you sure that's the fragment, though? I feel like this doesn't make thematic sense unless you're trying to take a complete turn here. If I could have, I would have chosen never to remember what that fact entailed. Oh, chapter split. Shit. Then when we fade back in, she's like, so I killed my mom, but nothing happened, and now I'm on the run from, the 9th girl discovered a solution. I'm on the run from, make up a name. I don't know. I was trying to make up a name for Oishi. Oishi isn't in this world either. It's some guy named Sam. I don't know. When I tried using the crystal ball with Yamamoto today, it still hadn't recovered enough for him to talk to Hanyu. Only half a day had passed, but maybe if I went to the storehouse, I'd get through. Hanyu once told me the old air from the past had remained in the storehouse, and that she felt comfortable there. Maybe that meant the storehouse was filled with Hanyu's power. In other words, while the crystal ball didn't have quite enough power, maybe being in the storehouse would help a little. Late that night, I slipped out of bed and snuck into the storehouse. Okay. I wanted nothing more than to talk to Hanyu. I went to the altar before the holy vessel and spoke into the crystal ball. Can you hear me, Hanyu? The light in the ball was feeble, but its otherworldly glow was clearly pleasant. Pleasant? Present. Please let her hear me. My wish was granted, and a quiet voice, so low it might disappear at any moment, spoke in answer. I can hear you, Rika. Hanyu, thank goodness. Listen, I have to cry. Pretend I'm crying right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know. This wasn't the time for crying. I needed to tell her everything I discovered and ask Hanyu's opinion. I quashed my frantic emotions and told her the fragment was in my mother. Hanyu stayed quiet for a few moments. She knew, of course, that I'd have to kill my mother to return the fragment to the world of the gods. It makes sense, doesn't it? You can only appear to Oyashiro-sama's reincarnation. I'm not the 8th in this world, so you can't appear to me. The 9th isn't good enough, huh? It was a very long time ago. Ancient times, so ancient even I've mostly forgotten. It happened back when Hanyu was still living in Hinamizawa. Before Hanyu became Oyashiro-sama. It was how it all began, which Hanyu never told me about no matter how much I asked her. My human self, that is, when I decided I would become a god, my daughter, your ancestor, Rika, was very sad about that. She knew I'd made the decision because I'd lost hope in the human world. I took all the sins of the human world upon me, for there was no other way to cleanse those sins other than to destroy the sinners themselves. People were forcing their sins on each other, an ugly existence. Their excessive cruelty caused me to lose hope in this world. I undertook all the sins of the human world and cleansed them by letting them kill me. I entrusted that final duty to my own daughter. I thought that unless I gave her that role, she would one day be despised as the daughter of a demon god and lose all hope in the human world herself. My daughter didn't like that role, but she understood the weight of her mission, and in the end, she went through with it. But she said something to me, that she would change the human world, in which only the price of life could purify its sins. Humans would combine their strength and help each other, cooperating with mutual benefit in mind. She swore to me that she would create this utopia, which her mother had only dreamed of. Please, Mother, do not lose hope in the world of man. I swear that I shall heal that sadness. But I would become a god. I couldn't accept my daughter's feelings. No, actually, that wasn't it. I had already lost hope in the corrupted world of man, and I just didn't want to look at it anymore. But my daughter made a firm promise that she would remake that world into something better. Then I shall believe in what you feel. When in this land people live happily, aid one another, support one another, and think as one, I shall return to this land once more. My daughter killed me and took control of the village, the divine power of the demon god dwelling within her. She became their leader, and... Dude! What the fuck are you doing, Nate? Anyways, she became their leader and created doctrines so that everyone would trust in and help one another. I'm gonna have to figure out how to turn off Steam things. Little pop-ups like that. By making them to fear a curse where discordant hearts would revive the specter of the demon god. She led them strictly, not letting my purification go to waste, so that those purified sins would never again revisit the village. And so the village did regain a temporary peace, but I never descended to them again. I had rejected the human world much too strongly. But no matter how strong the power to reject, it can never last forever. Whether hearts or walls, or lids or doors, there's nothing that time will not decay. Even the power shutting me away from the human world wouldn't last forever. My daughter would learn the limits of that power through a revelation from a higher god than me. It was said that when 8 generations of Furude bore a girl as their first child, I would come again. The miracle of 8 consecutive firstborn girls would be the key that broke my power of rejection. My daughter left that legend to the Furude family, and it passed down to her descendants, so that this land would continue becoming my ideal. Oh, zoom in, okay. So, Rika, when you were born as the 8th girl in a row, I was connected to the human world again. Long ago, I may have hated and shunned the human world, but a millennium without contact was more than enough time to heal my sadness. At some point, I actually started to feel sad at the prospect of living in a world where I was all alone. I had intended to spend those 1,000 years in rejection, but it was also a punishment for me. I realized how shallow my feelings had been when I hated when I hated and despaired over the human world. And before I realized it, the Furude family started giving birth to consecutive girls. When your mother was pregnant, I wished so much for it to be a girl. I'm sure. I mean, the first face I remember seeing wasn't my mother's. It was yours. Maybe abandoning the human world for 1,000 years was my punishment. Humans can only live in the human world, and they must live earnestly in the world they are born into. For someone who made light of that and tried to abandon the world so easily, maybe an exile of 1,000 years is a fitting punishment. Hanyu's words were heavy. Maybe, having been carefree in our walk between countless worlds, even comparing our own lives to dice rolls, we had been sinful. I lived with you, my friend and daughter of 1,000 years ago, and when we came to the dead end of 1983, I committed another sin. I used my power to change your fate. Are you saying that in the very first world, you should have accepted the fate of Takano cutting me open and killing me? It may sound cruel to you, Rika, but that is how I feel right now. I made light of the world I lived in, and I made light of the world you lived in, too. I should have lived in earnest in the world where we were together. I should have welcomed it, no matter its end. Stop that. Wallowing in masochism might make you feel better, but it makes me unhappy. I said I didn't want to surrender to that fate, and that I'd fight on forever to achieve a much more wonderful life, and made this 100-year journey with you. We're at the end. It's absurd to come out with that now. You're just being sentimental. Aren't you just making light of this world too, which you and I built together over 100 years? Don't you think that's selfish? Okay. It is man's sin to save a dying animal, then bask in rapture. We go up the snowy mountain, kill the beasts, and offer their numbers to the gods. After all this, you're saying it was my fate to die too? You've gone insane. I don't care what you say. The world we won is a result of our sweat and tears. You and I are the only ones who can understand how brilliantly it shines. And now you're rejecting it? Rika, please let me get back on topic. Once I had my fill of this world with you, the 8th, I planned to disappear at the end of your life. It had nothing to do with the time you'd be alive for, so I never told you. But in that world, your mother is the 8th. That means I've already had contact with the world of man, was satisfied with how wonderful Hinamizawa had become, and have already left for a higher plane. In that world, I've already left. That's why I can't appear there. But there's a fragment of your world there, and it's in my mother. Which means this. Only my mother knows that she is the 8th. If I kill her, the contradictory force saying you can't appear here will vanish. Correct? That's right.
originally it was an obvious fact that your mother is the 8th in that world, and killing her wouldn't necessarily change anything. But after you drifted here from another world, Rika, it would be like mooring a boat to a dock. To dock, I guess. Boat terminology. Yeah, that's what I expect from Hanyu, boat. It was fortunate only your mother knew the truth. If a lot of other people knew, you would have had to kill them all. I'm sure you wanted my opinion on whether you should kill your mother to return to the previous world or stay in this world. I did. This whole time, I've been investigating what kind of world you're in. And when I found out what it was, I expected this day would eventually come. And I predicted you would grow indecisive and talk to me about it, and that you would want to choose a world based on the result of our discussion. So I thought long and hard about how to guide you. Unlike the world of the gods, the words in the world of man are narrow. No matter what words I choose, they will carry bias within them. I thought very hard about what words to say so that you would truly choose for yourself. And I still am. After all, you've left the answer in my hands. If I suggested you should choose this world, you would choose it. You would shift the responsibility of paying the price to me. That would be cowardly, and there is no worth in a life resulting from such a decision. As someone who has trodden countless worlds and left her footprints outside the world of man, you must make a responsible choice, without relying on me, with your own strength. I know what you're trying to say. You couldn't bear me shifting the blame and saying this happened because I did what you said. Decide your own life for yourself. Easy enough to understand. I wanted to tell you this too. I was happy spending my life with you. And through those countless worlds we've walked together, I learned that Hinamizawa overflowed with kind and gentle cooperation. It had everything I wanted from the world. I wanted to say that even if you chose a world without me in it, and I was to disappear, I would still be happy.
Need water. Awesome.
Hanyu.
Hanyu had foreseen this. Sorry, I need a little more water. Okay. I think I'm good. Thank you, music, for kicking back in. Foreseen that this world would grow ever warmer for me. But Hanyu herself was in opposition to this world. Any amount of discussing this with Hanyu, who was from the previous world, would only make it more difficult to forsake that one. She had even anticipated that after discussing it with her, I would need to make a decision from an impartial viewpoint. That's why she said it. She wanted to accept whatever fate Rika Furude's decision gave her. She didn't want me to worry about her, and live in the world that I liked the best. Let's say I did choose this world. What would happen to you? Because of that world's rules, our long journey together would come to an end. For you, a life in that world, and for me, the fact that my time is already ended in that world would be applied. Doesn't that mean you would disappear? But that's a really, really pleasant thing. Rika, you seem to think of it as me dying. And at first, I thought so too, that the me in that world would die. But the Hanyu of that world, she may have disappeared, but she was filled with joy. She spent her life with your mother, enjoying her time to the fullest. Your mother is still alive, but that world's version of me is having a wonderful dream, enveloped in kindness, in a sleep from which she'll never awake. I'm sure that warmth, that comfort, is like that of a mother's womb. Now that I know that, I actually wonder if you will choose that world for me. Are you serious? If you had lived for 1,000 years, Rika, you would understand that warmth. I could feel an ecstasy in Hanyu's words. Hanyu would live for a millennium, and she understood that in a way I couldn't.
You have to be joking. I'm just a kid. I'm only 100 years old. Of course I can't understand. Rika, did you hear what you just said? What? Seriously? I'm only a kid, I'm 100 years old? Like, Christ, are you serious? Whatever. Would you please stop using me as a reason to run away from this choice?
I just realized, a god using another god's name in vain. My ad-libs are incomparable.
That was the truth. My old world and this one are being weighed on scales in my heart. It isn't tipping, even slightly, toward either side. Trying to shift the responsibility for choosing onto Hanyu was just me being irresponsible. I can tell you everything about that world's construction to help you make your choice.
Oh shit, another CG, okay.
First, Keiichi Mayabara, who told us many times that destiny could be broken. He did not transfer schools in this world. I knew that for a while now. He wasn't in my class. For a time, Keiichi suffered the stress of his entrance exams. But unlike in the previous world, he wasn't firing any toy guns at children. He strengthened his mind, endured the temptation, and finally overcame his mental weakness. Right now, he's trying to deal with the exams awaiting him as someone with a firm pride in his breast. Which means Keiichi-san is absent, which is why he never moved here. Rena Ryugu, too, never moved to Ibaraki, since her parents' company stayed in business. Therefore, the divorce didn't happen either. For that reason, Rena will feel no guilt. Rena had no sin either. On the day of the ceremony where the elder sister had her back tattooed, Mion Sonozaki and Shion Sonozaki didn't switch places.
So, wait. So does that mean the Mion in this world is the Shion of that world? That's... I mean, I guess that explains why she feels a lot different. And Rika must have not said, oh yeah, same person or whatever. I don't fucking know.
I see. I got the feeling that the Mion at school seems somehow different.
Yeah.
She always loved board games, but she talked about her little sister knowing more about them.
Okay, yeah, and that's why the club never got made either.
I see. I get it. Mion didn't push her role as the successor onto her younger sister, and now spends her days training to be the head of her family.
I guess this is something I should have guessed, but oh well.
Shion, too, attends a distant school so she can support the family without getting in the way, and she's working her—
Nate!
Nate is playing Mud Runner. What? Who's Nate? I don't know. That just popped into my head. She's working her hardest as we speak. The sisters both felt guilty at switching on the day of the tattoo ceremony. If that didn't happen, then Mion and Shion had no sin. I don't think I need to go on, but Satoko Hojo doesn't carry the sin of patricide. Satoko grew closer with her stepfather and they rebuilt their relationship. Because of that, she wasn't possessed by that terrible illness. The Hojo family didn't oppose the village, and they weren't even ostracized. Satoko has no sin. Well, for Satoko and her family, this would be their ideal world. For Satoko and her family? Wait, no. Isn't this the ideal world for everybody? Keiichi came to Hinamizawa because he had committed a sin. But in this world, he didn't, and was right now living his very best. Rena avoided her sad fate too, and never sinned. She called herself by her given name Reina, and was living happily. Mion and Shion were leading happy lives too. Without the tattoo incident, they were friendly sisters the way they'd been born. They were forced to live apart due to family matters, but that wouldn't be enough to tear them apart. For Satoko, this world was exactly the world of her dreams. Surrounded by the warmth of her family and big brother, she was leading a bright and healthy life.
This is the world that I, as her friend, should be wishing for the most. For Satoshi, well, this was the only world in which he still existed. He's still alive in your world. He's just, I mean, incapacitated, right? Was that true? In all the worlds I'd been to, this was the only one where he was alive. But he's, do you just kind of count him as dead? Do you not know that he's still up and kicking? But not really? Oh, whatever. Satoshi couldn't exist anywhere but here. And Rika Furude. For Rika, this world was... Maybe I had 0 friends. Compared to my old world, that was very sad. But I could change that now through time and effort. Maybe I was sad Keiichi wasn't here. But Keiichi was living a resolute life in the place he originally lived. Instead, I had Satoshi. He wasn't the same as Keiichi, but he was very kind and considerate. Even the club I was disappointed didn't exist could start the very next day if I wanted it to. With the Hojo siblings, Mion, Rena, and me. And maybe my other classmates too? What would the club be like with so many people? I didn't think I'd be able to compare it to the fun we had with Keiichi and the rest. I knew I wouldn't be able to place one or the other. My parents were in this world, and I'd already learned how to interact with them as Rika Furude, who had regained the love of her family. My parents weren't in the previous world, but I had lively roommates that wouldn't leave me feeling lonely. Satoko and Hanyu. If I chose this world, I'd have to say goodbye to Hanyu, the friend I'd spent 100 years with. Friend? No. If what Hanyu said was true, then she was my ancestor and a mother to me. Which meant she was on the exact same level as my father and mother. She was my family. My parents and Hanyu were both very important to me. I couldn't possibly weigh them against each other. That world is the ideal world, born of someone's dream. Nobody related to you has sinned. It's a very, very pure, clear, and beautiful world. I've already left that world, and Rika's life hasn't been corrupted. So I have no sin either. And you, Rika, you haven't corrupted your own life, so neither do you. Even Takano has no sin. Not a single person does. A perfectly white, blank world. That's right. And you can choose that now, Rika. Maybe this world is a valuable opportunity given to you at the end of your century-long journey by the god of fate, who even I've never met. They could have been a little more compassionate about it. Which is why that god gave you the chance to go back to your old world, too. By committing the gravest sin of matricide, you can choose to release yourself from this sinless paradise. Hanyu, you said your daughter killed you. What do you think of me repeating the act? If I were your mother, I would probably say this. Ow, what the fuck? What are you doing? Ow, oh my god, stop stabbing me, ow! If it made you happy, I would not spare my own life. It might be too early for you to understand, Rika. But it's a feeling only someone who has given birth to a child and become a mother can know. I was once a mother, so I understand. If you said going back to your old world would make you happy, your mother would gladly offer you her life. She couldn't. She's the one person who wouldn't ever say that. She'd just scream, "Are you crazy?" and go into hysterics. But then I remembered my mother's smile when we made curry together. Would it be so strange if such fearsome words came from her mouth? I don't regret my daughter killing me. Thanks to that, the sin she might have inherited was cleansed. If I had spared my own life, my daughter might have been persecuted, same as me. But have you ever thought about what the daughter who oh, wrong character. But have you ever thought about what the daughter who killed you felt? It's easier to die, isn't it? You can wallow in devotion and virtue as you die peacefully. But the killer has to bear that cross forever. Didn't you say so before? Your daughter vowed to create a Hinamizawa where everyone wanted to help each other, all for your sake. And your daughters, over 1,000 years, went along with your sin. Maybe you shouldn't have died. I don't know what the sin you were bearing was, but you should have lived and fought. Fought so that your descendants wouldn't have to bear the sin. But you surrendered, and for 1,000 years your descendants have been bearing your cross. Right? Hanyu was silent. That, without a doubt, was Hanyu's sin. It was easy to die for her daughter's sake, but her daughter's guilt would never heal. But when Hanyu answered, she remained undaunted.
Then, let me ask you, Rika. You, who say I should have lived and fought, what will you do now in that world? Do you wish to live in that world, accepting the reality you are in, and always fighting the oddities different from your old world? Will you abandon that world you gained after 100 years, stained in grime and sweat, and yet still beautiful?
She was right. Maybe this world was beautiful. But that didn't mean the way my old world shone wasn't beautiful too. Why wouldn't it be? We'd won that fate after such a long journey.
And even now, you call that world which you gained at the end of a century your original world. So however pleasant this world may be, shouldn't you throw it all away, fight the desire to stay in this world, and return to your original one? Even if you had to destroy this world, liberated from the sins of all related to you?
My daughter, who tells me to fight, you too should fight. To fight is not to defeat and overcome the obstacles before you. In the end, that is no more than a simple detour on the straight path before you. To truly fight is to make your own choices. At every choice in life, at every crossroads, people hesitate. Having one choice brightly illuminated and then selecting it, such a predetermined choice is not a fight. When no matter how many times you are presented with the choice, you choose the same one, it's inevitability. A real choice is when you truly think and worry, when you never know which you should choose. It is precisely the same as the choice between the red box and the blue box you spoke of once before. Will you choose the red box or the blue? Why are we doing a Matrix reference? To choose without guidance demands incredible courage and determination. That is a true choice. If you knew what was in the boxes, it would no longer be a choice. It is because you do not know what is inside that you can be satisfied with what is in the box you choose. If you knew the contents of the other, it could lead to despair. I vaguely remember this metaphor. I think it was in Minagoroshi. I mean, it must have been either Minagoroshi or Matsurubayashi. When was Hanyu introduced again? Badumch. Being left at a crossroads, with no guidance and no hints, is what it means to live. You may lazily continue to choose the right, or knock over the sign and choose at random. You may also search carefully for hints, worrying over how beneficial the left or right would be, and remain at the crossroads forever. Thus, you would be able to accept the final result awaiting you as your own responsibility, would you not? You would not grow old and go into your coffin wanting advice from your parents, would you? Worry, choose, and go forward. That is the fight. I earnestly worried and chose my own life. My daughters earnestly worried and chose their own lives. For each and every one of us, that is sacred. It is precious. The descendant 1,000 years later must not sully that. All who lived in that age were always beautiful. You must not speak of their lives using the values of later generations. That feels like a Christopher Columbus defense, but I know what you mean.
Lastly, I'll tell you something very important. The Kamu no Mikoto no Ri's power that connects us will soon be lost forever. I will never again be able to interfere with that world. So this is the last night I'll be able to hear one of these helpful lectures. There is one more thing. The fragment that has appeared in your mother will lose its power forever when the sun sets tomorrow. Losing doesn't mean disappearing. It means you will forever lose the chance to take back that fragment with your own hands. Which means I need to make my decision about whether to go back to my original world by sundown tomorrow. There's no third option to put the choice off. No. You may also choose to flee the decision, purposely ignore the last moment you have to choose, and passively stay in that world. If you did, would you live that life differently than the one you chose proactively? Whether or not I chose proactively was also whether or not I would accept this world. If I continued to live here without accepting it, I would drag along all the distress that I currently held forever. Compared to that, maybe it would be a lot better just to choose one or the other. But even that wasn't easy. Hanyu had said that very distress itself was the battle. Now, Rika, fight. Your fight will last until sundown tomorrow. But please, don't run away. Because whichever world you decide on, I know that world will be a wonderful one. Just like the world you gained after fighting for 100 years was. The world you choose after fighting through this will become beautiful. I'm sure of it. So please, Rika, you mustn't choose one without fighting. People are never, ever satisfied with the result of a choice they didn't struggle with. Thank you, Hanyu. I'll fight with this choice. If I can meet you again, it will be in our original world. And if it's this world, then take a good rest to heal your millennium of exhaustion. Thank you for everything. Thank you so much. It was because of your strength that I mistook my own life for something I could do over as many times as I wanted. If that's who I am, then I feel like it would be strange somehow if I was living in my original world. It was easy for me to think that if I slipped up in any small way, I could just do it over. But that wouldn't make that world a wonderful one. In that sense, I understand, just a little, your sin of using your power on me when you shouldn't have. But that sin belongs to me too, for walking through such an easy life. As we traveled all those worlds, I called it re-rolling the dice, treating my own life without respect. I think that this world taught me the weight of that decision. So, at the end, being able to choose a wonderful world either way means I really am lucky, right? I have no doubt that I'm the most fortunate person in all these worlds. Thank you, Hanyu. Thank you for giving me your kind words until the very end, when I was just stupid and conceited. I'll worry over this with everything I have. I'll worry and worry and worry, and grasp a really, really wonderful world. So thank you, Hanyu. Hanyu, please, answer me. Crying. Yeah, I'm not good at voicing that, that's for sure. The crystal ball was now quiet and cold in my hands, and gave off only a dull reflection of the flashlight that illuminated me. I shed all the tears I could. I thought if I didn't, I would hesitate when it came time to choose. So I cried out everything I had, and I thanked her for our 100-year relationship. Because depending on my choice, I might never get to say those words again. Then I replaced the crystal ball on the altar, where it was now just a marble, slipped out of the storehouse, and crawled back into bed. There was no way I was going to sleep. At least that was what I thought, until I wrapped myself in linens, felt the cool wind on my bare feet, and drifted off to sleep without realizing it. Rika Furude was going to sleep. I was going to sleep. Good night, everyone. Good night, me.
Okay. So, I'm done reading for the episode. But... okay. So she's gonna choose to go back to her original world. That much is obvious. But she's not gonna get there by killing her mom. That is obvious too. Because that just wouldn't make fucking sense. Because the whole point is that this world is just as valuable as the other one. And Bern is, you know, not Rika. She's distinguishing herself from Rika. So if she stays in this world, then is it really Rika who's happy? I mean, she's like treating it like she's letting Rika's feelings come through, like when she cried into her mother's arms and whatnot. But it's, I mean, you know what I mean. I don't know if I'm missing something or what. I'm a little shocked that they're implying that not implying, they directly stated the fragment is in Rika's mom because she's the 8th and not the 7th. But I'm still of the opinion that you can quash the feeling. If the fragment is the feeling, then you can quash the feeling. It's not some contradiction in the story and you're rewriting reality by killing the only other person that knows so you can just create alternative facts or whatever. That's not the point. So, yeah, I'd imagine we're really close to the end here. I mean, obviously, she said next sundown, which I would assume means this day that we just woke up on. So, yeah, interesting. And I still feel like it's going to end with, like, Rika having friends and Berncastle, Rika, going back to her old world. Because that's her world that she fought for, even though that's less the point. It's just she belongs in that world, Rika belongs in this world. And who needs to win here is less so Bern and more Rika. I believe that's what it is, because if the feeling is still something in her mother that can be quashed, that doesn't really change much, in my opinion. Because, like, if the feeling is, I want my daughter to be happy, then making her daughter happy is the same as Rika becoming happy. Regardless of where the fragment is, that's still the same deal. But yeah, it's still the case that the only loser in this world is Rika. The only person who the dice weren't nice to, and I know they're trying to, you know, drop the dice metaphor, but that is still the case, basically. The only person in this world who doesn't have a very fortunate fate is Rika. So that's the only thing stopping it from being a perfect world in its own scenario. But I don't know. This is too, like, Persona 5 Royal philosophical third trimester arc. Trimester? That's for pregnancy, not school. Semester. Whatever. You know exactly what I mean. I don't know 100% how it will end because they definitely threw a wrench in my theory, but I think it's like a distinction without a difference so far. It's still going to be that. Rika just needs friends, and so she needs to take the hands of her friends. And through that, the miracle is made. Huh? Yeah. Okay. That's gonna be it for this episode then, guys. If you liked it, then be sure to press the like button, and if you didn't like it, then fuck you too. Remember to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all my videos and stuff. And as always, my name is Godzi, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye! Yeah!